Yes. So let me begin with some full disclosures. I was a member of a group of researchers who helped prepare the amicus brief in support of Vergara, the Vergara case.
No, it's on. Okay, it's on. No, it is.
It's on?
No, it's on.
Sorry.
Okay.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay, so I did provide professional research support to the Vergara case appeal. Secondly,
I am told it's asthma, that I am not contagious.
okay. Secondly, I have tenure. And I like having tenure. I'm at a university. I'm a full professor with tenure. It's pretty sweet, and I probably wouldn't have gone if they hadn't given me tenure. So it is, as Randy said, an important part of the recruitment process. And the function of tenure, presumably, in the university is one of academic freedom, that you write and without worrying about anyone coming down hard on you. The fraction of professors in higher education in the United States who are tenured has declined in recent years. There are many more adjuncts who are teaching. There's a larger fraction of non-tenured professors in the pipeline. And the reasons for this, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is there are reasons I think that also apply to K through 12. One is costs. There's no retirement age, no mandatory retirement age for professors, so people can stay forever, and costs go up as your department becomes more highly tenured. And there's also a need for new blood, because a big function of the university is new ideas. So you want to continuously have enough flow in the system that you have new people coming in with new ideas. Teaching. The evidence out there about teaching is that tenured faculty at the university level, at least at Northwestern, are less effective teachers. My good Calder colleague, David Figlio, did that work. But anyway, I have tenure. I see its value, and I think it's important. Third part of disclosure is I was once a teacher, 5th grade teacher in a high-poverty school. It was, without a doubt, the hardest job I have ever had to do well. So teaching is tough work. It's really hard. Fourthly, I've done scores and scores of observations in classrooms as a function, as part of various evaluation studies. And, you know, I could walk in a room and you can pick out those teachers who are superstars, who are just knocking it out of the ballpark. But for the life of me, I couldn't identify exactly what was going on. Somehow they had socio-emotional skills, they had intellectual skills, they had the timing of a comedian. They were fabulous. It's a very multi-skilled profession. So getting on to K through 12 teachers, there are some things that are obviously different. And we know, the evidence is really clear, that, and it shouldn't be surprising, that teachers are the most important school factor affecting student achievement. It's a human-to-human work, at least right now. It's becoming more technological, but right now it's human-to-human work, so it's the humans that make a difference in school. Now, part of the reason that, and we know they're important for short-term, both for test scores as well as long-term gains. We know that having fairly early a really tough teacher, good teacher, puts you on a different trajectory going forward. So there are long-term gains in terms of earning that come from these very good teachers. So they're very, very valuable individuals. And there's wide variation among teachers. Some teachers are just much more effective in doing this magic, as I call it, than other teachers. So the top 15th percentile get about a year and a half gain on average, test scores, granted. The bottom 15th percentile get about a half a year gain. That's a huge difference. There's also more variation within schools than there is between schools in terms of teacher effectiveness. So in every school, both high SES schools and low SES schools, we find variation. So what are we going to do about this? We know that some teachers are having a much more dramatic effect on the performance of their students than other teachers. I think that's the common problem that we're all dealing with, the one that we really care about. And so what do we do about it? Well, in most organizations, you do two things. You either do it through training or you do it through selection. And you can see that if you look across professions. It's usually some mix of training and some mix of selection. The training literature research in education is not a particularly optimistic body of research. We know some of the best studies I've seen have been done by AIR, random assignment studies on professional development. We don't really get it. We don't get the effects that we had hoped for. Master's degrees, while we pay for master's degrees, Sunny Ladd has a new paper out. She was looking for it really hard. And she's an absolute straight shooter when it comes to her research. There's no payoff to master's degrees in terms of the effectiveness of teachers. Undergraduate teacher training programs. We can't find it there. I mean, this is sort of honest work looking for effects from training. What we do find is that teachers learn a lot on the job. And so right across the board, whether you start as a high performer or low performer, you get better. You get better with experience. But if we're talking about initial hiring as a point of selection, if we can't do it by training and we want to do some selection, if we want to do some selection at initial hiring, we really don't have much information. You know, where you went to school is not going to make a difference. Whether you have a graduate degree is not going to make a difference. Graduate degree is not going to make a difference. Those are all the facts that are on the table when you're initially hired. So we're hiring largely, not completely, but largely blind. We have another point of selection, and that's tenure. And that's why I think tenure is important, because we know some teachers are really, really good, and some teachers are not really, really good. We know that at this point we don't know enough about training to really ensure that all individuals are able to get to a fairly high level of teaching expertise. There's new work going on, which I think is promising, which tries to get into the sub-skill set of teachers. You know, I think that is promising work. But we don't get much satisfaction from that. So tenure gives us another point at selection. And it's a point at selection where we have a lot of information, a lot more information, because we've seen these teachers work in classrooms. They've been observed. And teachers, at least when I was teaching, knew how well the other teachers were doing. They had a sense of how well the other teachers are doing in the school. And there are student test scores. I mean, that's there too. And there's observation that goes on. So there's a lot of information that comes before tenure. So if you think of this as a management problem, with this flow of individuals going through a system, the question is where and when and why do you make different decisions? And the tenure one is a big one. What the Vergara case, and this is something that Leo mentioned in the beginning, was talking about, I think it was Leo, that 90+% of teachers got tenure and they got it after 18 months. Well, at that point, we really have very little information, so it really doesn't make sense. But if we use tenure seriously as a point of selection that is actually based on performance, it's actually based on a tremendous amount of information, then I think it would have significant effects on the whole status of the profession. Other professions typically have more stringent points of selection. We don't have it in education. We don't have it for teachers. It's fairly easy to get into a teacher's college. The graduate degrees aren't making much difference. And tenure allows us to make well-grounded decisions. So let me show you a couple of slides just to bring some of this home, and then I'll wrap this up. These are teachers in North Carolina. Teachers in North Carolina, we're going to look at North Carolina and we're going to look at Florida. And in each case, we have between 20 and 30,000 teachers that we're looking at. And what we wanted to know is how much change do we actually get over time in teacher performance? We couldn't get a long enough time period for individuals to look over these years, so we looked at them in chunks. We looked at the first 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years. So these are different teachers in these different groups. And what we see, as most of the research has shown, is that in the early years, there is significant growth. It's practice in the classroom. It's actually getting the feedback from the kids. It's actually taking control. And there's a lot of learning that goes on. If you look at the lines at the top are the most effective teachers. So you can see some teachers are hitting it out of the ballpark from day one. They too get better. And some teachers are really struggling at the bottom. They actually make larger gains, the ones that start low, but they're still at the low end of the distribution. If you look at 6 to 10 years, it sort of levels off, and those, high-performing teachers seem to drop a little bit during they're probably really working hard. They probably need some relief. But it still holds. And then we look 11 to 15 years. So what this says is that teachers who are good from the beginning, they do get better, but they end up being the really good teachers. And I think it's partly because this is such complex work, and it calls on so many different attributes of individuals. And I think some people are terrific. I mean, I think, I use the word magic when I observe them, and some teachers just, can't pull it off. So, okay. Well, that's my only slide, it looks like, because nothing's moving. But a couple things. I mean, the same pattern showed up in Florida, so we've got a completely different state, different set of individuals. And the point is that tenure is really important, because there are some people out there who are absolute stars, and they should be rewarded. And we should do everything we can to sort of keep them in the system. And tenure is a good. If I were queen of the world, I probably would want to completely restructure the profession, or if I were Randy Weingarten, I might want to push where tenured teachers would get paid a lot. They're really, really valuable, the ones that make it. And it's one of the few professions where we have a completely flat hierarchy for the most part. There's the principal, and then there's everybody else. And everybody else has different skill levels and different value to the organization, and prevents different value to the kids. So you can imagine a two-level system where those individuals who are terrific, they get tenure, they become the leaders, they become responsible for the new recruits coming in, many of which won't stay. Yes, it's a definite career ladder, which is very significant with a very high bar for tenure, because we know some people can do it. And there will be churning at the bottom, but those supervisory tenured teachers would be working with these people to make sure that the kids don't fall through the bottom. I had some other slides that I were going to show you, but I just want to stop it there. Again, I think tenure is important, and I think it's important for rewarding good teachers, and I think it's important as a management tool in order to structure the system as a whole to be more effective.
Thank you, Jane. Mark?